All right, today we're going to be in the Unit 2 packet called Linear Functions and Inequalities. And we're going to be on page 22, which is about graphing inequalities. So, for starters, okay, when you use an open circle, for signs less than or greater than, and then you're going to use a closed circle for less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. Okay, today we're just going to be graphing them and solving linear inequalities, and then it's going to get a little bit harder as we go through. So, looking at number 1, we have x is less than 3. So, since it's just a less than sign, that means I'm going to have an open circle. Okay, so on positive 3, I'm going to put an open circle. And then that says less than. So I'm going to shade the side of that circle where my x's are getting smaller, which would be the left. Okay, just think less than, left, greater than, right. Okay, if you want to add that onto the side, okay, you can. All right, number 2, we have x is greater than negative 1. So since it's just greater than, I'm going to have an open circle. So I'm going to find negative 1 on my number line, which is going to be right here, and I'm going to put an open circle. And then since it's greater than, I'm going to shade to the right. All right, number 3, x is greater than or equal to 7. So since it's greater than or equal to, I'm going to use a closed circle. So on positive 7, I'm going to put a closed circle. And then it's greater than, so I'm going to shade to the right. All right, number 4, x is less than or equal to 5, or negative 5. So since it's less than or equal to, that is a closed circle. So on negative 5, I'm going to put a closed circle. And since it's less than, I'm going to shade to the left. All right, number 5 through 8, we're going to write the inequality given the number line. So number 5, we have an open circle on 2, or on negative 2, and it's shaded to the left. So that tells us I'm going to be using the less than sign because it's open and it's to the left. And then the number that the circle is on is negative 2. I'm sorry if you can hear the rain outside. It's currently torrentially downpouring, so don't mind that. All right, number 6, we have a closed circle on 4, and it's shaded to the right. So I'm going to be using the greater than or equal to sign because it's closed and it's shaded to the right. All right, number 7, we have a closed circle on 0, and it's shaded to the left, so that's going to be less than or equal to, and then put the 0 because that's where the circle is. All right, and then number 8, we have an open circle on negative 3, and it's shaded to the right, so that means we're going to be using the greater than sign. So x is greater than negative 3. All right, so now we're going to talk about solving inequalities, and then we're also going to graph them on a number line when we're done solving them. So solving inequalities is really similar to solving an equation like you've done forever. So there's one difference, and that is that you must flip the inequality sign when you multiply or divide by a negative number. All right, and we're going to do an example in a minute where you're going to have to do that. All right, so number 9, we have 3x plus 2 is less than negative 4. So I'm going to solve this just like I would solve any other equation. First, I have to move that positive 2 to the other side so that I can get 3x by itself. So to move a positive 2, I do the opposite, which is subtract. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So I'm just left with 3x. And then negative 4 minus negative 2 is negative 6. All right, I have a 3 beside x, which I need to get rid of. So when a number and a letter are sitting right next to each other, that means multiplication. So in order to move that letter, I have to do the opposite. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So x is going to be less than negative 2. So now that we have that, let's graph it. So all I want you to do is put negative 2 in the middle. Okay, you don't have to fill in the rest of the dashes on this number line. Okay, just put whatever your solution is in the middle of the number line and then graph it from there. So we have a less than sign. So that means it's going to be an open circle. And since it's less than, I'm going to shade to the left. And then that's all you do. So let's look at number 10. I have x over 6 plus 2 is greater than negative 1. So just like any other problem, I need to get this x over 6 by itself. So to move this positive 2, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. These are going to cancel. So I'm left with x over 6 is greater than negative 1 minus 2, which is negative 3. All right, this bar right here means division. So in order to move it to where x would be by itself, I have to do the opposite. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. So that gives me x is greater than negative 18. So I'm going to put negative 18 in the middle of my number line. It's greater than, so I'm going to use an open circle, and I'm going to shade to the right. All right, let's look at the back. So we have negative 7x plus 8 is less than or equal to 1. So just like any other problem, I need to get negative 7x by itself. So to move that positive 8, I'm going to have to subtract. So I'm left with negative 7x is less than or equal to 1 minus 8, which is negative 7. All right, now to get x by itself, I have to move the negative 7. So those two numbers, or not numbers, those two things are being multiplied together, so I have to do the opposite and I have to divide. So right now we are dividing by a negative number. So I have to think back to that rule that we talked about. Okay, you got to flip the inequality sign when you multiply or divide by a negative number. So since we're dividing by a negative number, my less than or equal to sign is going to change to a greater than or equal to sign. And then I just work it out like normal. Those cancel. Then negative 7 divided by negative 7 is positive 1. All you're doing is flipping that inequality sign, and everything else stays the same. So I'm going to graph this on my number line. So I'm going to put a 1 in the middle, It's going to be a closed circle because it's greater than or equal to, and I'm going to shade to the right. All right, number 12. X over negative 8 minus 5 is less than negative 2. So first, I need to get this term by itself. So to move that negative 5 to the other side, I have to add 5. So I'm left with x over negative 8 is less than negative 2 plus 5, which is 3. Now remember, this bar means division. So in order to move that negative 8, I have to do the opposite, which is going to be multiply. All right, now we're multiplying by a negative number. So my inequality sign is going to have to flip. It's going to go from less than to greater than. So those 8's cancel. So I'm left with x is greater than 8 times negative, or 3 times negative 8, which is negative 24. So I'm going to put negative 24 in the middle. I'm going to put an open circle. Since it's greater than, I'm going to shade to the right. All right, number 13. Negative 2x minus 5 is less than or equal to 19. So first I have to get negative 2x by itself. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So that leaves me with negative 2x is less than or equal to 19 plus 5, which is 24. And then I'm going to divide by a negative 2. All right, so we're dividing by a negative number. So I'm going to take my inequality sign and I'm going to flip it. Then these 2's cancel, and 24 divided by negative 2 is negative 12. So I'm going to put negative 12 in the middle of my number line. Since it's greater than or equal to, I'm going to put a closed circle, and I'm going to shade to the right. Number 14. 3 minus 4x is less than 31. So I need to get this negative 4x by itself. So to move a positive 3 to the other side, I'm going to subtract. So that leaves me with negative 4x is less than 31 minus 3, which is which is positive 28. Okay, now to get x by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 4. I'm dividing by a negative number, so my inequality sign is going to flip to greater than. So it's going to be x is greater than negative 7. So I'm going to put negative 7 in the middle of my number line. I'm going to use an open circle because it's greater than, and I'm going to shade to the right. All right, number 15. 3 over 4x plus 5 is greater than 11. So the first thing I have to do is get 3 over 4x by itself. So I need to move that positive 5 to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 5. So I get 3 over 4x is greater than 11 minus 5, which is 6. Now I need to get x by itself, so I have to move this 3 over 4. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3 over 4. So 6 divided by 3 over 4 is 8. So I'm going to put 8 in the middle of my number line. I'm I'm going to use an open circle. And then since it's greater than, I'm going to shade to the right. All right, number 16, negative 5 over 6x minus 1 is greater than or equal to 14. So I need to get negative 5 over 6x by itself. So I have to move this negative 1 to the other side. So I'm going to add both sides by negative 1. So that leaves me with negative 5 over 6x is greater than or equal to 15. Then I have to move that negative 5 over x, or negative 5 over 6. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5 over 6. I'm dividing by a negative number. So my inequality sign is going to flip to less than or equal to. So it's x is less than or equal to negative 18. So I'm going to have negative 18 in the middle. I'm going to have a closed circle. And then since it's less than or equal to, I shade to the left. All right, 17. I have 5x minus 2 is less than or equal to negative 7. So the first thing I have to do is get 5x by itself. So to move that negative 2 to the other side, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And then negative 7 plus 2 is negative 5. Now I have to get x by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 5. I'm dividing by a positive number, so my inequality doesn't change. And negative 5 divided by 5 is negative 1. So I'm going to put a negative 1 in the middle of my number line. Since it's less than or equal to, that's a closed circle. And I'm going to shade to the left. Number 18, 6 minus x is less than or equal to 14. So the first thing I have to do is get x by itself. So to move this positive 6, I'm going to subtract both sides by 6. So that leaves me with negative x is less than or equal to 8. Then that negative sign next to x represents a negative 1. So I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 1. I'm dividing by a negative number. So my inequality sign is going to flip to greater than or equal to. And then 8 divided by negative 1 is negative 8. So I'm going to put negative 8 in the middle. I'm going to use a closed circle because it's greater than or equal to. And I'm going to shade to the left. All right, number 9. 4 minus 1 over 3x is greater than 11. So the first thing I have to do is get my negative 1 over 3x by itself. So to move that positive 4, I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides. So negative 1 over 3x is greater than 11 minus 4, which is 7. Then to get x by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 1 over 3. I'm dividing by a negative number. So my inequality sign is going to flip to less than. And then 7 divided by negative 1 over 3 is negative 21. So I'm going to put negative 21 in the middle of my number line. I'm going to use an open circle, and since it's less than, I'm going to shade to the left. All right, last one, number 20. X plus 11 over negative 2 is less than negative 2. So remember, this bar means division. So in order to get that negative 2 out of the bottom, I have to do the opposite of division, which is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply both sides by a negative 2. Since I'm multiplying by a negative number, my inequality sign is going to flip to greater than. So I'm going to have x plus 11 is greater than 4 because negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. And then I'm going to get x by itself. I'm going to subtract both sides by 11. So x is greater than negative 7. So I'm going to put negative 7 in the middle of my number line. I'm going to use an open circle. And then since it's greater than, I'm going to shade it to the right. And that concludes the lesson today for graphing inequalities.